I come from the future with a warning. The nuclear war turned our Earth into a wasteland. I write to you from a future you cannot yet fathom, a world devastated by nuclear war and blanketed in ice. As the last survivor of my group, I have used what remains of our technology to send this warning back to your time. In our bunker, we discovered a functional quantum communication device, an experimental technology from before the war. The device allows me to send messages across time, a final, desperate attempt to prevent you from repeating our mistakes. Let me share our full story, hoping it will serve as a grim lesson. In 2036, geopolitical tensions reached their boiling point. We lived in constant fear, but no one truly believed the leaders of our world would push the button. Yet one cold January morning they did. Missiles were launched, and within minutes, cities were obliterated. The sky lit up with the infernal glow of nuclear explosions, then darkened as debris and ash blocked out the sun. The nuclear winter began, and the world as we knew it ended. I was stationed at a remote research facility in the northern wilderness when the bombs fell. The isolation protected us from the immediate blasts, but it also meant we were cut off from any form of rescue or communication. Our team of 15 scientists and support staff quickly realized our chances of survival depended on finding a more secure shelter. We decided to move to an old military bunker we had explored years earlier during a geological survey. It was a 2-day trek through the frozen wilderness, a journey fraught with peril. We packed everything we could, food, medical supplies, and essential equipment, and set out, hoping the bunker would provide the sanctuary we desperately needed. The journey was harrowing. Temperatures had plummeted far below zero, and the once fertile land was now an icy wasteland. Snowdrifts slowed our progress, and the cold bit through our heavy clothing. On the first night, we camped under the skeletal remains of a forest. The trees, stripped of leaves and blackened by radiation, loomed like grim sentinels. As we huddled around a small fire, the eerie cries of mutated creatures echoed through the night. The radiation had twisted the fauna into grotesque monstrosities. We saw deer with multiple heads, wolves with extra limbs and glowing eyes. They kept their distance that night, but we knew they were watching us. We reached the bunker on the second day, half frozen and exhausted. It was a grim, imposing structure buried beneath the snow and ice. We pried open the heavy metal door and stepped into the dark interior. The air was stale and cold, but it was a relief to be out of the wind. The bunker had once been a military command center, equipped with thick walls to withstand blasts and radiation. We found a small cache of supplies, canned food, water purification tablets, and medical kits. It wasn't much, but it gave us a sliver of hope. We spent the next few days sealing off radiation leaks and setting up a living area. Living in the bunker was a constant battle against despair and decay. The radiation sickness set in slowly but inevitably. At first it was just fatigue and nausea, but soon we were losing hair and developing sores. We rationed our supplies meticulously, but the constant hunger and thirst were unrelenting. To stave off madness, we tried to maintain a semblance of routine. We cataloged our remaining supplies, set up a schedule for maintaining the bunker, and even conducted small research projects to keep our minds occupied. But the reality of our situation was always there, gnawing at the edges of our sanity. As our supplies dwindled, we knew we had to venture out to find more. Paul, our leader, organized foraging missions to nearby towns and settlements. These trips were fraught with danger, radiation, the cold, and the mutated creatures all posed significant threats. On one such mission, Paul, Sarah, and I set out to a town 20 miles to the east. The journey was grueling, the wind cutting through our clothing like knives. The town, once a bustling community, was now a silent, frozen graveyard. Buildings lay in ruins, and the streets were filled with the charred remains of cars and people. We scavenged what we could: medical supplies, canned food, bottled water, but it was never enough. Each trip yielded less and less as other survivors had already picked the towns clean. The exposure to radiation took its toll, weakening our bodies further with each mission. One particularly harrowing mission stands out in my memory. We had reached the outskirts of a small city, hoping to find a supermarket or pharmacy that hadn't been completely looted. As night fell, we took refuge in what remained of a church. The stained glass windows, shattered by the blasts, cast eerie, colorful patterns on the snow-covered floor. We made a small fire with broken pews, the warmth a fleeting comfort. As we sat in the flickering light, we heard it, a low, guttural growl. A pack of mutated wolves had caught our scent. These creatures were abominations, their bodies twisted by radiation, their eyes glowing with a sickly green light. Paul grabbed a makeshift spear and tried to fend them off. The lead wolf lunged, its jaws closing around his arm. His screams of agony echoed through the church as the beast tore into him. Sarah and I fought desperately, but we were no match for their speed and ferocity. I felt claws rake across my back, and then everything went black. I awoke to a cold, gray dawn. The wolves were gone, and the city was silent. Paul was dead, his body torn apart. Sarah was unconscious but alive, her face pale and drawn. We were alone, our supplies gone, our hope dwindling. We had no choice but to return to the bunker, though it felt like a death sentence. The journey back was even harder than the journey out. We were weak from hunger and the cold, our bodies ravaged by radiation sickness. By the time we reached the bunker, only 5 of the original 15 were left. The bunker, once a place of refuge, now felt like a tomb. We buried Paul outside in the frozen ground, the act almost more than we could bear. Inside, the bunker was filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional cough or sob. We tried to maintain hope, but it was slipping away with each passing day. As the weeks turned into months, the psychological toll of our isolation became apparent. Nightmares plagued our sleep, visions of the world before the bombs fell and the horrors we had witnessed since. Some nights we would hear scratching at the bunker door, the mutated creatures growing bolder, sensing our weakening state. One night, as we huddled together for warmth, we heard something different. A human voice, calling out in the darkness. We opened the door cautiously and found a man, emaciated and half-mad, begging for food. We took him in, hoping he would bring news of other survivors. But his mind was shattered by the things he had seen. He spoke of a settlement to the south, where people had turned to cannibalism to survive. He stayed with us for a few days before succumbing to his injuries and madness. Our numbers continued to dwindle. One by one, radiation sickness claimed us. Sarah was the last to go. She died in her sleep, her face peaceful for the first time in months. I buried her next to Paul, the frozen ground unforgiving beneath my hands. I was alone now, the last survivor of our doomed group. I spent my days maintaining the equipment, trying to keep the generators running, hoping against hope that someone would come, that I would hear a voice on the radio. In the depths of the bunker, I discovered an experimental device. An old quantum communication unit, a relic from before the war. It had been part of a secret project to communicate across time. A theoretical technology that had never been fully tested. Desperation drove me to tinker with it, to see if I could send a message back in time. After weeks of trial and error, I managed to get it working. The device allowed me to send text-based messages to a military-based point in the past. I realized this was my last chance to prevent this future from coming to pass. I have used it to send this warning to you, hoping that you will heed my words and change the course of history. Do not let our fate become yours. The world ended because of our hubris and our unwillingness to seek peace. We destroyed ourselves and our planet in the pursuit of power. Please learn from our mistakes. Seek diplomacy, cherish peace, and protect the fragile beauty of your world. As I sit here in the cold, empty bunker, the howling wind outside a constant reminder of our folly, I know my time is short. But I hope that my words will reach you, that you will heed my warning and change the course of your future. Because once the bombs fall, there is no going back. The world will become a frozen wasteland, and humanity will be but a whisper in the wind. Please, do not let this be our legacy.